Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. We are here at Hatch Collection in LA. It is a beautiful, nice day outside, evening. I'm here with Lauren Archer, who is she's a postpartum doula, and she's going to be talking to us today about nursing, breastfeeding, and any other questions you might have about postpartum experience. She's also a mother, so and is breastfeeding, so she knows all about it firsthand. And I'm Eliza. I am the head of marketing with Lilu. We power new moms. We have the first hands-free pumping bra that has built-in massage to help you get more milk. So yeah, without further ado, Lauren, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and give us a background?
Sure. Yeah, so I am a postpartum doula. I am very into boobs and breastfeeding and everything that goes along with it. I got into being a postpartum doula because I was a nanny for about 17 years. Towards the end of my career, I started taking newborns and hearing about this word doula, and I kind of was like, oh, I'm kind of doing that, so I should really just go for it. So ever since then, I got my training, and I'm kind of a research nerd, so I really like to learn much more about the topics, try and really dive into it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we might have people coming in and out of the doors and everything. So if you're watching this, just excuse any noise or interruptions.
I'm a mom of a toddler, so it's always like someone's walking around or doing something.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to breastfeeding, it's one of the biggest topics that I talk about with my clients. There is a huge upswing in wanting to nurse, extended nursing. It's a really exciting time because a lot of people are embracing it, which is amazing. So this perception that you kind of just put your baby to your breast and then you guys are good to go, which is not really how it works. There are a lot of aspects about breastfeeding. It's not only a physical thing that you do with your child, but there's a lot of mental and emotional aspects that go along with it. So even if you don't have trouble latching in a physical sense, there is a lot of emotions that go with it of kind of being the only food source for your child, always being under a child, having to be someone's everything. It's a lot to think about 24/7.
Yeah.
And so it is really important. People are always asking me like what they need when they are pregnant, and I'm always like, wraps are great and onesies are amazing, but the things that you really want to have are services. So someone like a postpartum doula and IBCLC. So putting a option for people to give you money on your registry is a really great idea, because the postpartum doula can help you over those tricky times in the beginning where you are struggling to latch or you're struggling to be someone's everything. And IBCLC is a great resource because they're a international board certified lactation consultant, and they can really help diagnose physical issues that are going on with your baby. And a lot of questions that come up are things that you're like, no one told me this, or I had no idea that this would happen or this would feel this way. So having someone kind of be there to be a soundboard is really a great idea postpartum.
And probably make you feel like you're crazy or you're not doing it wrong,
right.
And just educate you on how to move forward and get things to work.
Yes, exactly, because boobs are amazing. They respond in very cool, magical ways. Like I understand the science behind it, but there's also a little bit of like, wow, that's really cool. And so that's another aspect is just like, people are concerned about breast size or like, oh, I don't feel engorged, I must not be making enough milk. And none of those things matter. You can nurse if you've had implants. You can nurse if you have a size A, or you can nurse if you have a size G. It really doesn't matter. What really matters is knowing the information on what's going on with your body. So it's very interesting. So when you first have your baby, your breasts make milk. Like you could have potentially had 8 babies. And that is why we get engorged. That's why we leak, because your body's like, I gotta feed kids, maybe? Like, I don't know. So it can be very confusing because knowing that some women never get engorged and they really worry about their milk supply or they never leak. But that's not usually indicative of what your baby is getting. And the only way to know how much your baby accurately transfers is to do a weighted feed with someone like an IBCLC. So you can't just look at your baby and be like, you look like you're getting enough food. Or if you are concerned about those things, not to freak out, but to know that there is a way to accurately discern how much your child is transferring. And that is an option. And so at about 3 to 4 months is when your breasts regulate, your milk supply regulates. And that is when a lot of people think that there's a drop in their supply. But what it is your body has recognized that you've had 1 baby or 2 or 3 or however many you've had, and is making milk according to when they come to the breast instead of like every minute of every day.
Your body is becoming efficient.
Yes, exactly. And so it can be scary because when we talk about pumping, pumping is amazing. I'm so like grateful that we have tools that like old pumps, you have to like suck and have your own like suction, which is great that we don't do that now. Like I can Netflix and just sit there, which is fascinating and very efficient. But a lot of people think how much they pump is an indication of how much their baby is getting, and that is false. So most people don't realize, by the way, that an average pump for in between feedings is 0.5 to 1.5 ounces. So we kind of look at Instagram and we kind of hear these people who are like, I pumped 8 ounces, and that's really atypical, if you will. So it can, when you're pumping 0.5, even though you're in a typical normal range, it's really easy to be like, I'm not doing what I should be doing. But that's false. Because anytime you pump in between feeding your baby, it's extra milk. And that's really important to remember as well. And there are definitely things that you can do that can help you yield more milk during those feedings.
I'm so sorry.
No problem.
So things like massaging your breasts, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later because you guys have an amazing product that helps it be more efficient. So I can continue to Netflix and do literally nothing while pumping. But you can, massage breasts. You can get the correct size pump. So people don't realize that flanges, which are the part of the pump, this is a flange, has a specific size opening. And most of the time, women will eventually have to either increase or decrease their size. And a decrease in the size for flange is pretty typical once you start getting past that point where you're like, oh my God, my boobs are so hard and they're so engorged and like I've never been this size before. Eventually that goes down, or it goes back to where you were before you gave birth and started nursing, even if you are still nursing. And so like for me, I went down like 3 sizes after about a year, because what you'll notice is if you don't have the correct size flange, you won't yield as much milk. So a lot of times when you notice there's a drastic difference in how much you're pumping, changing your flange and making sure that you have the correct like replacement parts, replacing your pump parts is really important too when it comes to pumping. And most people don't even realize that you should be replacing these. Every manufacturer has their own, but usually every 6 months at the very least for flanges, maybe once a year if you don't pump that much, can really make a difference in how much milk you yield and eventually pump, which is, so a lot of people don't think about that, which I wouldn't either. You've got a lot of other things going on. Replacing your pump parts is not like high on my to-do list, but it has to get done.
Yay, fun spending. So the flange size correlates to the nipple size, correct?
Correct. Well, it correlates, yes, to how much you want. So you don't want, if a flange is too big, you'll be pulling in way too much of the breast tissue, possibly a lot of the areola, even extra more tissue. If it's too small, your nipple, and some of your areola or breast tissue will be rubbing up against the side, which just is painful. And so you can do some things in the interim, like lubing your flange with coconut oil, which is safe in small amounts for your baby to consume. It can really help to, if you're like, oh man, this doesn't seem like the right size, but I only have Prime and it can only come in 2 days.
Was just there. Totally was me a few days ago.
Right. So there are some things you can do. You can also hand express. It takes a while. Some women really do find it easier, but I have tiny childlike hands, so to sit and to hand express, it's great in a pinch, like on an airplane, or if you start leaking and you're out and you don't have a pump with you, you can at least go to the bathroom and express so you feel some relief. But for me personally, it's not a everyday sort of thing when you sit down to pump.
And which is different for every mom. Yeah. So what are like just in breastfeeding in general, like what are some of the reasons why, other than like returning back to work, what are some of the reasons why moms would end up turning to a pump rather than just breastfeeding directly?
There are some reasons. So some moms choose to exclusively pump. There are some mental aspects that go along with breastfeeding that some moms just really can't get past. There's actually some certain things like DMAR, which is a really physical reaction of unsettledness and really not liking putting your baby to your breast. And it's something that you cannot control. It doesn't mean that you hate your baby. It does not mean that you're not bonding. It's really a chemical thing that you cannot control. So some moms who want to breastfeed, but really can't get past that, choose to exclusively breastfeed or exclusively pump.
Yeah.
And if you pump and you give your baby a bottle of pump milk, you are still an exclusively breastfed baby. So just because you're feeding your baby breast milk from a bottle doesn't mean that they're not breastfed. So that could be a reason. Working is another good reason. Sometimes it is just you have other children and other responsibilities, so it's really nice to be able to pump so that you can offer that bottle to the nanny or a friend, your partner, so that you can spend some time with your older children. Also, it's pumping is and giving a bottle is a really great way to get partners involved because they kind of feel like they don't have the boob.
They don't have the tools.
They don't have the tools. So kind of being able to pump and give them a bottle. And it is important that when it comes to pumping, you do know that a great window to introduce a baby is 3 to 6 weeks to a bottle. And that is so that breastfeeding is established, but not so far that the baby's going to be like, I don't want this bottle. So 3 to 6 weeks and to be consistent. That's the thing. A lot of people will give a baby, get really excited to pump and give their baby that first bottle. And then they don't give it again until it's like time for them to go back to work and they really feel the pressure and their baby won't take it because you just didn't use it consistently. So once a bottle is introduced, it is really, really, really important to use it consistently. Otherwise, you hear like my baby won't take the bottle or they prefer the breast. Or you hear my baby prefers the bottle, and that's because most likely you're not pace feeding, which is really, really important. So it is kind of the difference between your baby like beer bonging the bottle and like sipping it nicely. So we think, and we see this a lot in movies and TV where you just like hold the bottle upright like this. And the baby has no option but to chug and chug and chug, which is not the way that they eat at the breast. At the breast, they stimulate, actively eat, and rest. And then they continue that cycle. But with a bottle, all you're doing is actively eating. So when someone's like, my baby was so hungry, they finished a bottle in 2 minutes. Well, when you really think about it, you weren't giving your child a chance to finish it in a longer amount of time. And so what happens is because babies are, hi.
He's just staring. He's so interested.
Speaking of babies.
Yeah. Babies are designed by nature to always take the easiest route. And that doesn't mean that they're lazy. It means that they're geniuses because they're taking the easiest route to survive. And so what they're going to start doing is they're going to go, that bottle is way easier than me working at the breast. And but what can happen if you don't pace feed is you can also cause a lot of gas issues in a baby because essentially they're just chugging 3, 4, 5 ounces, which is a lot for their stomachs. So it is really important to pace feed, which is kind of holding the bottle horizontally, taking it out, burping them. It should really take you about 10 to 15 minutes. to feed a bottle to a baby at the least.
Does the baby ever, like, with age and time, like, get used to, like, if they can hold the bottle themselves? I mean, do they get used to face feeding themselves?
Yes.
Or?
So once they get older, and boob and breast, or if they're mainly on the bottle, they kind of take over because kids want to do everything themselves. So when you do have a kid who is 6, 7, 8 months and they can hold the bottle themselves, you kind of trust that they are doing it. Also, it'll hit a point where the solid foods are introduced, so parents kind of feel like, hey, that's okay. But breast milk is amazing because even at 18 months, if your child nurses at least 3 times in 24 hours, they're getting 50% of their nutritional value for that day.
It's very affordable.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So 18 months is like a time. I mean, they're like walking and talking, and you think that they should be eating a ton of food, but if they're still breastfeeding, they're still getting a ton of nutrients, which is amazing, but not surprising because breast milk is magical.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm kind of having that problem with him with the bottle and breast. The only time he's wanting to, or that he's working for it, is when he's like dream feeding or sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to like kind of introduce it back to him? Like, you know what I mean? Is there, because he's just, he just wants his bottle during the day. He's
Right.
like, dude, I don't want to work for my food. I want it now.
Right. Yeah.
So is there a way to like,
Yeah. So if you don't have to give a bottle and you do have time, like on the weekends or at the end of the day, to offer just the breast, I know as moms, it's really scary to be like, I'm going to starve my child.
Mhm.
But that's not how your child works. And so,
He's like,
you
yeah,
know.
Is he smiling?
He's like, don't tell them this. What will happen is eventually they will eat at the breast. And so it's really working. And you can kind of make it a magical experience. So taking them away from toys and distractions, putting on some really great music, sitting down in that place that makes them feel comfortable, maybe a chair where you used to nurse,
Mhm.
or even laying down with them in bed, having a stuffed animal or a blanket, kind of singing to them, kind of making it less of a meal and more of an experience.
Okay.
And then you can kind of start reintroducing the bottles and still trying to keep that bottle in that rotation. Because
We have a toddler, so it's
right,
like, I need
right.
that bottle. But I miss nursing, and I'm pumping a million times a day to get him that milk. So
Right.
it's nice to nurse him during the day too.
Yeah, so kind of especially like where he normally would chug a bottle, or like have a big bottle, like maybe in the morning he wakes up and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm
Mhm.
so hungry. Like kind of creating that space. You can also kind of take him in a bath with you if you want. That's a really great special place for a mom to nurse with her babe.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, they're warm, they're splashing. It's very like, you know, water, kids love water. It's very like womb
Yeah,
sort of
reminiscent.
elements. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe creating a time, and he might, and also not to be discouraged, and talk to him about it and be like, hey, we're just not going to have a bottle right
It
now.
makes me sad when he's just like turning his head, pushing it away. I'm just like,
And also to remember, like, especially at his age, like breastfeeding is an ebb and a flow.
Mhm.
And it goes with the developmental, where your kid is developmentally. So at like 3 to 4 months, a lot of it sort of becomes an ebb, because your kid is like, I can roll over. I can turn my head. I'm losing a lot of my reflexes and gaining a lot of control. I don't want to look at your armpit for 20 minutes, 40 minutes a day. I want to do things. And so then like 4 to 5 months, and then they're like, I want nothing but the boob, and that's kind of the flow of it. And then they ebb again at around like 6, 7, because they're starting to move and get mobile.
Mhm.
And so it really is to remember in those ebb moments that it's not so much you, and he's not rejecting you. It's just he doesn't want it. He wants to be playing.
yeah.
He will eventually, you know, a lot of babes, if you keep offering, give them, they know you have it.
Right.
They smell it on you a mile away.
Right.
And to just like talk to him and be, you know, you guys are a team, and it can be, you can say, I'm frustrated right now that, I want to. You can also try while he's latched to kind of encourage him and be like, hey, this isn't, you know, we can be as efficient as a bottle.
Right.
But, and also to really make those bottle feedings like as much work as it is. So like making him 20 minutes, 15 minutes, so that he kind of knows, like, because they don't, a lot of babies don't. They want to be with mom. Right. They want to be with you, and that's home base to them.
So I also heard that if you're doing back and forth between like the bottle and breastfeeding, like as they get older, to kind of stick with like the nipple, like the slow flow.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard, like,
you can.
Something that's like a myth? Or...
Yeah, I found in my experience that it's not so much about the nipple or the bottle or the pacifier or whatever. It's more about how you use these tools. And so if you use them properly, then it really shouldn't make a difference for most babies, because if you're still making those bottles 15, 20 minutes, then it doesn't matter how slow the flow is. Most of the time, I just, like, my son still takes a bottle when I'm not around, which is pretty infrequently, but he's on like a number 1, and that's only because I forget to change it. I don't know where my number 2s are. Some of them go up to 3 or 4. But you can. It doesn't matter in terms of that. I wouldn't, like, again, if you are on a slow flow but you're not pace feeding, then it's kind of a mood issue. Yeah. Right?
Do you guys have any questions? Ladies, I should say. No? Not yet? Okay. Any questions over from our live audience? Not yet? Well, yeah. So I guess talk about, like, we can talk about massage and like hand expressing versus actually massaging while you're pumping.
Yeah.
You want to talk about like the efficiency of a pump versus a baby?
Yeah. So pumping is great. A baby in theory will always be pull in more milk than a pump. Just because that's the way that they're designed to. I wish that they're coming out with some really cool pumps now, but it really is suction on your nipple. There's a baby, when they feed, they use their tongue in a specific way to pull out that milk, and that's just not how the pump works. But pumping is really cool because you can then offer your baby a bottle, and you can step away too. Stepping away is a really great part of self-care and making sure that your mental health and your emotional well-being is taken care of postpartum. And so because we have our boobs, first of all, are not identical twins. They're sisters and they work together. So like when you have a letdown reflex, it happens typically on both sides. But it is really important to remember that your milk ducts go all the way around the breast. And so that is where massaging can be really, really beneficial, because your milk ducts, you can be massaging all the way back here, which your flange usually only covers right around here. So while it's pulling out the milk using suction, when you massage, or if you massage these, the under milk ducts or the inside milk ducts, it can really help to get any of that milk that's left in the duct out into the bottle. And pumping, doing that while pumping is kind of just like you're tag teaming it. You've got both things happening, which can be great. Like, and also massaging while pumping can help avoid plugged milk ducts. So you get a plugged milk duct when the milk sits in the duct for too long. It's very painful, and it can turn into an infection called mastitis. And so that one of the ways that you get rid of plugged ducts is massaging. So one of the ways that you can be proactive in avoiding plugged ducts is massaging, which is a great, it doesn't have, it can be the entire time. If you pump usually 15 or 20 minutes, your hand might get tired. So sometimes sporadically throughout the pump session, some moms will choose to do it maybe like at the last 5 minutes, just so your hand doesn't get tired. And you can't really do it while wearing a bra. So you kind of have to like create a wall with your arm to hold the bottles on, because if you do it with a pumping bra, the bra is inhibiting. And that's why this bra is so great, because you don't have to, you can wear the massage or the bra and be massaging at the same time, which is kind of genius, and you don't have to create a wall.
How many ducts are there in a breast? I actually don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I heard a long time ago, or I read somewhere, and I haven't looked into it since, that there could be like between 8 and 20 or 22, something like that. And they do not have to be the same on either side. That's why some people will say that one breast outperforms the other. I had one mom who the breast that didn't pump as much, she called it her shitty titty, which I just thought was a really
amazing.
funny term that I feel like everyone needs to be. I need a shirt or something with like just an arrow to the right. Yeah.
I've heard of slacker boob.
I always call it the studded bud.
Yes,
I
yeah.
have my dove.
Right, and you can do some things to help that side, but really it can be that you just have less milk ducts in that side. And so if you try to do these things where we do like power pumping, or we drink a lot of things, or we try a lot of crazy, the other side is also going to get that effect. So what you can really do is you can get one side super engorged, and then you're at risk of having plug ducts and mastitis. While you're trying to just get you have capacities, right? There's only so much that your milk duct can hold. And so if you're really trying to up one side, the other side you might hulk out, so to speak. And then you just kind of get into risking those plug ducts, which is it's really painful to get rid of and have, so it's not fun.
Yeah, and ducts, they're not like in a straight line either, right? Like they're just all kind of like woven in there and amongst the tissue, and like your ducts are not the same for every woman.
Right. I have this picture that I show to my clients. I don't know if you want to see it, but it's really cool because it's basically it's just, you can see that. I'll show it to you. And I got it from the Tribes of Mama. They have amazing things that are pretty cool. But this is a great visual of what your breasts look like underneath.
Oh, whoa.
It's really trippy.
It's almost like a bunch of bananas.
Yeah.
They're like lima beans.
It's a really trippy picture. And so that is what it looks like. And so that's why it's really important to massage and take care of your boobs. And yeah. Everyone's interested.
Everyone wants to see.
Yeah, I don't know. You want to see it?
I sure want to see it. It's pretty cool.
That is not what I pictured.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we just kind of think of a boob, and you're like, oh. It's just
little things
Yeah.
like that.
Right?
Yeah, so they go all the way down. So yeah, it's pretty amazing and fascinating. And I haven't counted, but these look like a pretty even amount. That's really, it's a good visual because it's really hard to see inside a breast. And that is also why, like, when you pump or when you're worried about how much your child is transferring, it would be so much easier if you had a transparent boob, or like it had little like markers that was like, oh, that was 2 ounces. All right, you had a good meal.
They don't come with an instruction manual,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
right.
But that's where someone like you comes along.
Yeah, exactly.
So you talked a little bit, or you mentioned power pumping. Like what is
So power pumping is something that a lot of people will do to try and get your milk supply up. So while we do worry about milk supplies, it can be kind of counterintuitive when you try to make yourself have a bigger supply than you're intended to, because what happens is so stress and dehydration are the 2 biggest inhibitors of milk. And so what happens is people will think that they're supposed to be pumping X amount of milk. They don't, because they're not really supposed to be pumping X amount of milk. And then they go into this hyperdrive of, I have no supply, I'm losing my supply, my baby is starving. And that's really not the case. And so what they'll do is they'll do things like they will drink certain drinks.
like teas,
Lactation teas. Some of these things though are not actually really that great. So there's a Starbucks drink that is about like $7, but people think it's amazing, but it's all coconut milk, which is super hydrating. So it has nothing to do with this magic Starbucks drink. It's juice and coconut milk. That's what the drink is made out of. There is a performance drink that is a sports drink, but it is a ton of sugar. And it also has coconut milk or coconut water in it. So people think it's these magical things, but really drinking, you kind of want 8 ounces of water for every time you sit down to feed your baby or you sit down at a pump, which is a ton of water a day, especially for a newborn who's eating about every 2 hours. It's a lot of hydration. Usually after you give birth or right when you sit down to feed, when you start nursing, you'll start to feel dehydrated anyway. But then life happens and we kind of start like going back to work or going and meeting friends for brunch or kind of want to be on a schedule. And we forget that we just had our baby. And we forget to drink 8 ounces of water a day, or sorry, every time you feed. And so power pumping is this thing where you're trying to like simulate cluster feeding. So cluster feeding is when your baby is going through some sort of developmental growth, and what they'll do is they'll only want to be at your breast, and they'll do kind of things that are like 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on, 15 minutes off, 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And it's just like, I call it the Netflix days because I tell my clients, I'm like, just take your shirt off, order down, hold your baby and binge watch something on Netflix, because it really can be a lot to be like, oh, the baby's going down, and then 10 minutes later they're up again. So power pumping is kind of stimulating a cluster feed where you would sit down and you'd pump for X amount of minutes, and then you'd be off for X amount of minutes, and then you'd be on. So it'd be like you pump for 20, be off for 10, pump for 10, be off for 20. Like there's a bunch of different instructions on how to do it. But really what can be counterintuitive is that when you sit down at a pump instead of feeding your child, that is not going to help regulate your milk supply. So bringing baby to your breast, especially in the first couple of weeks, is going to be the biggest way to up your milk supply. And feeding, because your baby is going to pull out exactly the amount of milk that they need. They're kind of magical that way. You never really want to force feed a baby breast. You can't really overfeed a breastfed baby, but you don't want to ever try and feed them more like out of a bottle or if they don't really want to, because they are master caloric regulators. So they only take in as much as they need to every single feed. And every single feed is designed specifically for that feed. So like babies don't really make melatonin until 3 to 4 months, but they found in some studies that there is a higher amount of melatonin in breast milk at the end of the day than there is at the beginning of the day, which is, it's like, that's the magical part where your body's just like, oh, okay, we're going to try. And it's not like you can pump a nighttime bottle and then give it to your baby at nap time and they're out.
Yeah.
I wish that was the case. But
I have heard of moms who will like, even if they freeze breast milk, they'll put like this was a night pump or this was a morning pump because they're trying to like get their baby's rhythms going.
Yes. And so that's like the magic part. But yeah, so power pumping can be helpful if your supply has actually dropped and your baby is at a certain point, or pumping in more than you should a day really can be helpful if you had a preemie baby or you have multiples. And so pumping can be a really powerful tool to ensure that your breast milk supply stays up. But again, a tool can be used improperly. And so if you choose not to pump properly, it can actually inhibit your milk supply.
Yeah. I was just gonna ask you. Okay, I forgot. Do you guys have any questions?
I'm just trying to listen as much as they can.
Yeah.
I might at the end, but yeah.
Do we have a question from
We do. We have a fabulous multi-part question.
Oh, multi-parts.
Okay. There's so much noise on the internet about do's and don'ts about breastfeeding and breast pumping. Expecting moms are researching on the internet before giving birth, and by the time they realize there isn't really such thing as not making enough milk from amazing influencers like yourself, they've already gone through so much guilt and judgment. How do you recommend moms evade all the noise and judgment? And when during a pregnancy would be a good time for expectant moms to start learning about nursing and pumping, and also what are good places to start?
Oh my gosh, I've forgotten all the questions already. What was the first question?
First question is, how do you recommend moms evade all the noise and judgment?
Usually not listening to the advice of friends and family members, which sounds kind of mean. But the thing is that when a person gives advice, no matter how well-meaning it is, what they're talking about is their experience with their baby, and you are not giving birth to their baby. You are giving birth to your baby, and you have never met this person. And so,
The baby.
You're right. And so, that's really, really important to remember. So kind of like mom groups on the internet can be great, but if you are in one on Facebook or anything like that, where you are seeing a lot of judgments slung around, or advice, like opinions given as facts, just jump ship. It's really not worth it. We have so many times to feel guilty, and you can just save it for later, because when you're pregnant, you're supposed to be, focusing on yourself and your body, and you can't what if the situation. That is, you, even if you have breastfed a baby before, you still have never breastfed this baby. And so for you to even compare your own past experiences, when I work with clients who have had poor experiences before breastfeeding, we kind of talk about and process that experience, and then also remind that person, like, this is a clean slate. So even if you weren't able to do something in the past, or even if you did have issues with X, Y, and Z, you get to start fresh with this baby. And it's something to be mindful of, that experience, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be a repeat experience.
Part 2, when during pregnancy would be a good time for expectant moms to start learning about nursing and pumping?
Usually at any point you can go and take a breastfeeding class. I always recommend classes. I teach a childbirth education class, and breastfeeding is something that we go over, but really a basic one. What you can do during pregnancy is you can line up a postpartum doula. You can line up an IBCLC. Some hospitals, especially here in LA, are getting rid of their lactation consultants. So I hear a lot of clients who have, every time a nurse came onto shift, they had a different opinion about that person's breasts and their breastfeeding experience and their journey thus far. And that's just a lot, especially after you gave birth. And so someone like a postpartum doula or an IBCLC can approach the situation that isn't full of opinions. We're looking at your situation and your situation only, and the things like that I give to my clients while I connect on a level that we're both mothers. I never compare my experience or share my personal experience in a way that I would want to it to kind of
project on the other person.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you covered this, but third part was, what's a good place to learn about?
Yeah. So, there are some really great pages on Instagram that have actual information. There is also a couple websites. kellymom.com is a great website that is evidence-based. Evidence-based birth is another great website that is evidence-based.
So Kelly Mom and evidence-based birth.
Yes.
Okay.
Because while, it's really, when it comes down to breastfeeding, it is amazing to hear other moms' experiences, other birthing people's experiences, and to be able to come together to be like, yeah, I was in the middle of Target and I looked down and I had 2 wet spots and I have no idea how long I walked around in the store like that. That can be a great experience, but it doesn't provide any actual information. So mom bloggers, mom influencers, things like that are really great places to turn to, where you can kind of commiserate. You can kind of recognize that you're not alone in this experience of motherhood and becoming a parent. But kellymom.com, evidence-based birth. I post a lot on Instagram that is which is, I hope, helpful to some people.
I think so. I mean, you have a lot of people that follow you. True. Yeah. Do you guys have, you ladies? I have to stop saying that. Have any questions?
I'm just trying to think. I did not take a breastfeeding class or anything. I'm doing 5 weeks, so I'm kind of just relying on a lactation consultant in the hospital.
Uh-huh.
And then I have one person that I haven't committed to her, but like someone who could come to the house to help. Because like I was kind of like, well, I don't really know what it's going to be like now.
Right.
So that was kind of my thing where like, do I need to take a class?
Yeah, classes can be helpful. Basic breastfeeding classes can be helpful just to understand what your breasts are like. Oh, that is a typical response, or hey, that's kind of atypical. We definitely need to watch that. Hospital LCs can be great. The hospital is like this bubble though, where like you have people and things are happening where I hear a lot of like my baby latched great in the hospital, and then I came home and nothing seems to be going right, which isn't surprising because you have like the lights are on, someone's always there, someone's really helping you position your baby in that perfect latch. You feel like you're really supported and safe, and then you get home and it's just you and your baby and your partner, and you're kind of like, I have no idea what I'm doing, you know? And so that is where like having a postpartum doula or like an IBCLC, lactation consultants and IBCLCs are two very different things. So an IBCLC is an international board certified lactation consultant. They put in a lot more hours. It is a different certification. There's different requirements, and they're able to do a little bit different things than a lactation consultant can. So a lactation consultant is great. There are also like peer breastfeeding support. The Leche League is a great resource for things like that. They do have meetings.
What is it exactly? Because I feel like my insurance like keeps sending stuff on it. And I'm wondering.
It is La Leche League is a wonderful group that does help with breastfeeding. And so they actually do
like
have
meetings.
There are meetings. They do have a website that has a ton of information as well. But someone to come to your home and to help you is always really great because you're in your space. You're with your things. It's a totally different vibe. And babies are really good at picking up vibes. And so sometimes in the hospital, also especially after you give birth, you've kind of taken this, your baby has taken this like crazy long journey and they're on a different planet. And a lot of times they're tired. And so they latch really great in the hospital because they're not like, they don't really have a choice. Like they're just tired and they're there and you're like, this is great. I have no, I've never done this. You've never done it before. So when someone's saying that looks great, you're like, okay, that looks great.
This is it.
And so like an IBCLC can be great to line up and they can come and make sure no physical issues. A postpartum doula is really great to do different holds and different latches. It can be, they're really great at like, there are always red flags that I'm looking out for that I'm not going to tell my client about to begin with. So I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm listening to make sure that they don't have a tongue tie. But when I start to hear something or see something, then I might be like, hey, why don't we call in an IBCLC that I trust, that takes insurance, things like that, that I know that this is a person that I trust, that I've seen in consults and stuff like that. So it's like those kind of little things. Like when you have 15 minutes with a lactation consultant in a hospital, that's maybe like one feed at a time. Whereas when you have someone in your home, like I do shifts of like at least 4 hours, and that can be 2 or 3 feeds. And if it's like something that I'm hearing or seeing consistently, that gives me a broader picture of anything that could be going wrong. Or it could be going great. Like if you're really concerned about it, and then I'm seeing over the course of the day that we're having, really minimal problems, I'm there, the first person to be like, you guys are doing great. That's amazing. Everything is on track. Which is, it's very helpful sometimes to know what is wrong, but it's also really helpful to know that nothing is wrong. And to have someone kind of cheering you on.
Yeah, that's true.
How soon, or like what's typical, or what do you recommend a time frame for bringing in someone like a postpartum doula after giving birth?
Usually there are plenty of clients that I get to their house the day that they come home from the hospital, or if they've had a home birth or a birth center birth, where you leave very quickly after. It could be the same day that they gave birth. And that's usually, for my clients, I usually recommend within the first 48 hours, just so that I can come and ensure that your breastfeeding journey has gone in the correct trajectory that you're hoping for. Because you'll get family members or nurses or your partner, and a lot of people kind of say things, just like the mom groups that I'm like, don't go with me, where they might be like, a mother-in-law might be great support, but she might be like, well, I didn't have any of these problems. And it's like, she might, right? And it's like,
get away from me.
Right.
Boundaries. Can we have a conversation about that?
Yeah.
And it's like an in passing thing. But you are also like, as a fresh, raw person who just gave birth, you're very, very aware to things like that, because you are number one. You're who the baby, is going to be holding the baby a ton of hours out of the day. And so to hear that, or a partner might just be like, well, we could always give formula. And like that can be very, that can really push a spirit down and really make you doubt yourself. Whereas that might be something that I suggest, but only after I know that it's okay with you, or we've tried a bunch of it. Like, I'm all about options. Yes, formula is a great option, but you also have this option and this option and this option and this option. So ASAP is my answer.
Yeah. And what other than like breastfeeding and pumping and things, like, why else would somebody bring in a postpartum doula?
Because everything about motherhood is a huge horizon. I mean, we've just spent like 30 minutes talking about boobs, and I could talk about them for hours. And that's just one aspect. You all are also dealing with other body parts where you're like, is that normal? Is this supposed to be like this? Also, again, just those opinions. So when people are like, I get a lot of, is this normal? Is my baby supposed to be doing this? And like, I wish I was as amazing at my job to walk in and be like, I got the number on that baby. I know that this is where they want to sleep. This is where they want to eat. But that's not true. But I like to say parenting is like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I happen to have all this stuff that you can throw at the wall. And so like my toolbox is very expansive. And a postpartum doula doesn't give biased or judgmental. So if you say that you want to start formula, I'll be like, great, let's talk about formula. Let's talk about your options. Let's talk about maybe seeing an IVCLC or continue pumping, or why are you thinking about formula in a non-judgmental way? Just because sometimes some people just need to say it, and they need someone to be like, well, you could, or you could try this. And then it kind of like rights them again. Or if you're like, I want to bed share with my baby, cool, let's talk about safe bed sharing. If you want your baby to sleep in the bassinet, great, let's talk about safe bassinet sleeping. All these things, we go over baby wearing, I do plenty of the first where they're like, I don't know how I'm going to go to the market with my baby alone. And I'm like, great, let's go to the market. And so we talk about some options on how you can get your baby into the car from your home, what you do once you get into the parking lot, how you go shopping, little tips and tricks. A lot of little things that you're like, oh, that's a little hack that can make your life way easier. Baby wearing is a really big hack, but I love it. You're hands-free. You can nurse in a wrap or a carrier, which a lot of people don't know. And so just like a lot of studies, like, I'm the person who's going to go into the dark web of Google and be looking at, sometimes the topics that even I talk about on Instagram can take hours and hours and hours of research, because I'm cross-referencing and re-cross-referencing and checking who the author is and all this other stuff. Whereas like when you just gave birth, you're like, I can barely just make it onto Instagram. I'm not going to be being like, who wrote this article in 1945 and have any more studies come out. But I will do that. Also just resources, like being like, I have a great IVCLC, I have a great chiropractor, I have a great mom group, I have a great place if you do want to weigh your baby. You don't have to go to the pediatric, the pediatrician. There's a couple places around LA you can go and weigh your baby. And like, that's great. So kind of those, all that information that you might not even, you don't know what you don't know, but I do. I know what you don't know. And I'm happy to share what I know so that you can have you can have all the information to make the best decision for you and your family.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
My thing is more just like the breastfeeding, but then the pumping is a little scary.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how that works.
Yeah. It is very intimidating.
Yeah.
Usually, and this again is where like when I'm there for a lot of first pumps, where we can talk about the pieces of the machine, knowing the tool that you're using. So the pieces of the machine, how your machine works, how often you need to be pumping is a big thing. People kind of are like, pump after every single time you feed the baby, which is like, oh my God, all I'm doing is fiddling with my boobs all day long.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, and you don't actually have to do that. There are certain situations where that might be applicable, but for a full-term baby who is really doing well on their breastfeeding journey, you don't really need to be pumping after every single feed. Finding a great place to sit, a comfortable place, kind of understanding your pump too is a huge thing. There's a lot of popular ones, but you sit and they kind of have a lot of buttons and options and numbers for some of them, and you're like, I don't know what this button means or when I'm supposed to turn it up this way. Or a lot of people will think that when they pump, the higher the suction, the more milk they'll get out, but really that's kind of false. Some women kind of go over the top and then they're really doing damage to their nipples, which means it's then painful to pump and painful to feed. So kind of understanding the tools and then also understanding your body, understanding how much you should be pumping, time-wise of like, oh, I can sit down. I've had clients who are like, I have efficient eater. My baby usually eats between 8 and 10 minutes, and that's how much they eat, and they're growing great and cool. So I don't think I need to sit at a pump for 20 minutes. And so they just pump for 8 to 10 minutes. Great. They've tried sitting at the pump longer and they don't yield any more milk.
Right.
So maybe that's the way that their body works.
Right.
There are people though that do have to pump more often. And so kind of just understanding your body, understanding the tools that you're using, and then knowing that you have options.
So it's not just like in the beginning, if you just solely breastfeed and not pump, like, because you can do that too, right?
Yeah, totally
you
fine.
Have to pump.
I actually don't really, unless there are specific reasons why you would have to pump.
Okay.
Really waiting for that 3 to 6 window when you would introduce a bottle. Because what can happen is in the beginning, if you're pumping, that means you're not bringing baby to breast.
Yeah.
And so your body is, you're losing a lot of that aspect because baby is going to be the most efficient eater. Also, we just want to make sure baby's getting their calories.
Yeah.
You're also exhausted. So to ask you to pump is like, get out of here. No one has time for that. And you can also risk inducing an oversupply, which risks engorgement, which risks plug ducts. And the last thing I would want for anyone when they're 2 weeks postpartum is to be fighting plug ducts and possible infection. So not worth it for most people.
Okay.
There are certain and this is where like having someone come in to talk to you and be like, what, like I have so many questions, like, are you going to work? Do you have help? Do you have a part? Like those kinds of things where you can't just go on Google and be like, how much should I be pumping?
Right. Yeah. Because everyone's different. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What we usually talk about too is like, you want to pump if you have the wonderful, amazing option of just waiting to pump until you go back to work or whenever that is, or you need to go back to work, like don't start pumping on day one of like going back to work. It's like really bad idea. So like you do want to get comfortable with it until you need to fully rely on it.
Right.
But you also don't need to like worry about starting to store milk in the freezer like the day you gave birth.
Right. And that's if you started on day one, you would probably get 0 milk.
Okay.
What you would get is 1 or 2 drops maybe of colostrum. Colostrum is that yellow, it's thick. It is like the superfood of superfoods.
Yeah.
And so your baby can have like 5 or 7 drops of colostrum. I mean, good for a feed. And so what happens is that colostrum thins out, it becomes whiter, and it turns into mature milk. Some people might say that their milk came in, but your milk is always there. It just needs to mature from colostrum to that white, thin milk that is milk, that you would drink. In the first week is actually can be really just mentally detrimental because you won't get anything. If you have had other children, milk tends to mature quicker sometimes. So some women can start pumping a little bit earlier and might produce something because their body's already like, oh yeah, I remember what I was supposed to be doing. Right. But usually for first babies, it's kind of like, just wait. You have a lot of more important, like, I'm like, have you eaten? Have you drank water? Have you showered? Like, pumping is the last thing that I would be like, hey, what are you doing on day 2?
And also, like, just to add to that, because I just like was thinking back 7 months ago. There's such a, I mean, everyone has their own experience, and I know you probably have heard that a million times, but I have to say it again as a new mom, like, just try to remember that, because I feel like I still really struggle with, like, people just trying to get their opinion constantly, and it's annoying. So I say that to say, like, it's really, I really felt it was supportive to be really present. And, you know, when the milk came in, like, yes, it was this, like, overwhelming physical experience. Like, it kind of hurt, but it was kind of like, you know, exhilarating at the same time. And there's always things going on, but it was so beautiful that I feel like if there's one thing that I would invite you to do is just be present with what's happening. Because it's like, that only happens once. Like, your first kid, your milk coming in, like, it will never be like that again, you know, because every kid's different. So, like, looking back in retrospect, and it was only 7 months ago, is like, I would just be present for that and, like, welcome what your body's doing to be able to provide for you and the baby. It's really beautiful. And, like, tell everyone else to just be quiet. They're like, thank you. I didn't ask for your opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, speaking of not talking about pumping too soon, I am going to talk about the Lilu massage draw for a minute. So at Lilu, we build technology to empower new moms. We really just saw a need in the market, like, you know, the lack of innovation in the pumping space and, like, how inefficient pumps are, but just, like, how difficult it is to create a new breast pump that is more efficient and closer to a baby actually nursing. So our whole philosophy is, like, moms deserve more, and they deserve more technology, and they deserve more tools that are going to help them like, produce and, like, kind of get, you know, we guilt ourselves so much as women in general, and then especially when you have a baby. And we're just like, why can't technology help to relieve some of these issues that we, like, beat ourselves up over? So that being said, our first product is the Lilu massage bra. So this is a hands-free pumping bra that you'd wear just during pumping sessions. So it allows you to be hands-free by holding the flanges in place. So hand goes in here, and then the bra holds it against your breast, and you can watch Netflix and scroll Instagram and not have to worry anything. But there's also massage cushions inside, excuse me, inside these little pockets that I will pull out and show you. So well, that doesn't work. I'm glad we're recording this. Okay, I'll show you one. So this is one of the massage cushions. It's actually adjustable depending on your cup size. You can make it larger or you can make it smaller. But these cushions are designed so that way they hit and stimulate those milk ducts that we saw in that very informational photo earlier. So this is designed, it fills slowly with air the same way if you were massaging, like you would do slow, you know, consistent movements where you would be trying to push or, you know, you're kind of guiding milk out of the breast. So this is basically what this is designed to do. It has a controller in the center that's a wireless and rechargeable. There's 2 settings, so low and high. You would set up your pump, get the flanges all set up. You could turn your pump on first or the bra on first. But what this does is try to help mimic the hand motions recommended by lactation experts and help make your pump more efficient and more like a baby would actually be feeding. So nothing's as efficient as a baby actually feeding, but this is a nice second place. Right. Yeah. And just for anyone who is watching and anyone here, we are selling these for pre-orders. We have a Kickstarter campaign live that's ending next week, but you can get the bra for a discount when you pre-order on Kickstarter. It'll be delivering in May or June, depending on which option you choose. But we are already in production, like it's already done. There are some lovely ladies in the room who have actually used it. And today on the Kickstarter page, anybody watching, anybody in the world, you can, if you buy the bra today, you do get a free little gift, which, speaking of being hydrated while you pump or nurse, our friends are a company called Stojo, and they make these really cool collapsible to-go cups. And this one was custom made for Lilu. It has #handsfreehero on it. I live in New York. It's my favorite thing because I drink my coffee on the way to the subway, and by the time the train comes, I just have to do this, put this back in, seal it.
That's
and
the amazing thing ever.
I love that so much.
So you will get this for free today only on the Kickstarter if you buy the Lilu massage bra. That is my sales pitch. But yeah, if you just want to talk a little bit quickly, we will let everyone go home. But if you just want to talk quickly about your experience, or
yeah, I mean, personally, when I used it, I was really intrigued because I've never seen anything like it, and I look at baby products all day long. And so I thought it was really good. I mean, personally for me, I had 2 letdowns the first time I used it, and I usually only have 1 when I pump, so that was kind of rad because I yielded a lot more milk than I normally would. And so I thought it was comfortable. I was really like, oh, it's going to feel weird, but it was nice to be able to be so hands-free. And not have to work so hard, because massaging is part of my typical pump behavior. It's something that I do anyways. So it was nice that something else did it for me.
yeah.
Can I add to that? Yeah. I've been using it also, and I have something I've called a delayed letdown, and chalk it up to augmentations or just the way it's worked. But the Lilu has actually given me a quicker letdown. I used to take 9 minutes, 11 minutes, and I would just sit and pump and pump and pump and just wait. It felt so good to finally feel it. And just to have this actually doing the massaging and like getting that letdown, I almost want to cry because it was just like kind of heaven sent, but it just put so much more time back in my day. You know what I mean? Like it's waiting 9 minutes for like that letdown, awful. So to be able to get it a lot quicker was great. So yay. I would love to get 2, but I was happy just to get one.
So good question. What is a letdown?
A letdown is the reflex that lets the milk flow, so to speak. And so what happens is your baby, like I kind of mentioned before, that their eating pattern is to stimulate, activate, and to rest. So what they do is they stimulate, and what it does is it sends a signal to your body to release the milk. And so you have that letdown. Some women, some people will say that it feels like, when your leg falls asleep, they'll feel that in their boobs. Some will feel like a pulling in their nipples. Some will feel like a stretching right across here, I've heard of. Some people never feel let down, which it's not an indication that you are not producing milk. You just might not feel that reflex. And so as babies get older, they'll do things differently to stimulate that letdown quicker. And so they might like pound on your breast. They might try and fiddle with the other nipple.
And Beckham like,
yeah. They might caress it. They might massage it for you.
Yeah.
They might pull on the other nipple, kind of play with it. And all what it's doing.
Funny that they know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
They're trying to elicit that letdown faster, or just elicit it
faster
to happen. Yeah. And so
it's breaking the seal.
Exactly.
It's like such
it's amazing.
It's
I
amazing.
love it.
I know I sound like I'm like, there's unicorns and rainbows in here, but there's so much about early motherhood and like even from pregnancy that rolls in that's just like stressful and like unpredictable. You know what's gonna happen, and for that one moment, like especially when the baby latches, and you'll experience this even like as soon as you give birth, it's just like it's bliss. Like there's no other like joy I've ever had in my life, but like that moment the baby latches and this feeling, the letdown, like the feeling of the oxytocin. Like I feel like I can feel the oxytocin like immediately calm me. Like I'm serious. I feel calm. Like I was stressing and like like arguing or nagging my fiance, and then and then all of a sudden I'm just like I'm good. I'm like, oh, it's fine.
Well, the hormones that help with breastfeeding relaxin and oxytocin. Oxytocin is part of the same hormone release that you get when you orgasm. So that is why you're probably that feeling comes from.
Is that why I loved it so much?
Right.
No,
Right.
it's great.
But it's all, and that's all nature telling you that you should be experiencing this, and also that's just how our bodies work. It's nothing about, whatever. But it's supposed to be like, it's supposed to elicit a really good feeling because nature is telling you to keep feeding your baby, to keep doing this. I mean, a lot of what happens when we become parents after you give birth to a baby is just nature. It's instinct, and that is the magic part that I was talking about earlier. Like, I get the science, yes, hormones are releasing, but the magic part is like this hormone is like causing you to be like, I love this. This is amazing. Which is, of course it is, because nature wants you to keep feeding your child so that they can survive. So it works. It's a very symbiotic relationship between you and your baby, even if you don't feel that some days, because I don't feel that some days. I'm like, I don't know who you are. But then he does something cute, and I'm like, I love you. So again, that feeling, the oxytocin.
That's awesome.
So in terms of with that pumping bra, so it's not connected to like a bigger thing?
No, so there's just the remote in here. You just charge it with the USB cable, and then you have to actually use your pump. It works with all of the regular breast pumps on the market that are reimbursed by insurance. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
So you work with your pump. It's not an actual pump.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but there are other like hands-free pumping bras out there, but there's nothing that has a massage built in that actually helps increase the efficiency. So those ones just kind of look like a bandeau with slits in it.
Okay.
So ours actually, is created to like help make it more efficient. And we've had moms who said they've had more than one letdown. We've had moms who've been actually output like 200% more milk compared to not wearing the bra. We've done a lot of testing. We've been developing it for over, I think 3 years at this point. And like over 150 moms have tried it and tested it. So it's been like a really cool journey, and we're like really super excited to be releasing it out into the world and like have people actually talking about it. This is the most amazing thing.
And it also feels really good. Like I've only used this twice.
Yeah.
I just got mine, but I like, by the way, I was like, is this happening right now? Like
I got a text at like midnight and she was like, oh my God.
Isn't a text at midnight the best one? So.
Yeah, and it was a good text. It wasn't a big screaming text.
I was
I get those ones.
Yeah.
No, but I've been using it for a while now, probably
like
3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple months.
Yeah, it's been 3 months, I think. I started using it as soon as I got it, and it like literally has been night and day for me. Absolutely. I was, like I said, I have my stud and my dud, and my dud was, if on a good day, but I don't want to like go into it, like whatever, but it was probably half of what the other one was.
Yeah.
And just after using this, and instead of like, I would have to pump one at a time because I would use one hand to massage, because of that delayed letdown. I was, but with this, I've been able to use both sides, and my dud has been like kicking.
Becoming a stud.
That's right.
He's still kicking. He's the little engine that could. So he's trying.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much for teaching us today about all kinds of things. Thank you everyone online. And again, back us on Kickstarter. You don't have to be a mom who's pumping. You can also just back the campaign and support Moms Deserve More. So thank you.
Thank you.